Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well and you're surviving all of this. I can't believe it snowed today. It's awful. I'm so mad that it snowed. But anyways, if you're reading chapter 3 or you've already read chapter 3 and you're thinking about doing the discussion post for it, I just wanted to do a quick rundown to make sure that you understand it properly, and hopefully this will help if you have any questions. So chapter 3 starts out with Scout. She's trying to beat up Walter Cunningham. Now, the Cunningham family is kind of a side family that you'll see later on in the book. One thing to know about them is that they're essentially good people. They're honest. They have their faults, but and they're also very poor, which is the problem for Scout, because in chapter 2 she got in trouble first because she can read, and then second because she told Miss Caroline, the teacher, that Walter was poor, and apparently that offended Miss Caroline because she was embarrassed for lending him money. And so Miss Caroline, she's a new teacher, but clearly she has her faults. She gets Scout in trouble, and Scout takes that out on Walter. So she's trying to beat up Walter Cunningham at the beginning of chapter 3. Scout is very immature. She thinks that it's Walter's fault that she got in trouble for telling Miss Caroline that he's poor. And Jem, her older brother, has to break it up, and he ends up inviting Walter to dinner with them. And they call it dinner, but it's like lunch. They get to go home for lunch here. And so when they meet up back at their house with Atticus and they're having lunch, so Scout's having a bad day, and one thing that surprises them is the way that Atticus treats Walter. Walter is younger than Jem, but he is older than Scout. He's been in the first grade for a few years because he has to drop out halfway through the year every year to help out with the family. And so it's funny because in the movie version of this, Jem is not really impressed with the fact, like, this is the Jem, the actor, and he's not really impressed with the fact that Walter can own a gun. That doesn't happen in the book, but I think this image of the actor playing Jem in the movie is a pretty good indication of how they're probably feeling about the way Atticus treats little Walter Cunningham, because he gets treated like an adult by Atticus. And one thing about Walter is that he asks for molasses and he dumps it all over his food. And I'd like you to think about why he would do that. For Scout and Jem, that would be very abnormal. I think for a lot of you guys too. Why would you want to dump molasses all over your food? But let's think about the access that Walter might have to it. And so the scene in the movie is really funny. It doesn't follow the book exactly, but where did my little picture go to? This is Scout's reaction when Walter is dumping the molasses over his food. She goes, "What in the Sam Hill are you doing?" And she says "hill" too, which is kind of funny. So she gets in trouble for that. She's having a really rotten day, and she goes back to school. So that's what we see of Walter Cunningham. When she goes back to school, it's kind of another funny little scene. You get some really bad language from Burr's Ewell. The Ewell family is another family that you should know about. They're actually more important than the Cunningham family in this book. Burr's Ewell, I think it's on page 34, if you have the copy that we have, that I gave you guys for before we left. Miss Caroline realizes that he's got what they call cooties coming out of his hair, so he's got bugs coming out of his hair. And so she screams and she says, "It's alive!" she screamed. The male population of the class rushed as one to her assistance. Lord, I thought she's scared of a mouse. Little Chuck Little, whose patience with all living things was phenomenal, said, "Which way did he go, Miss Caroline? Tell us where he went. Quick, D.C." He turned to a boy behind him. "D.C., shut the door and we'll catch him. Quick, ma'am, where'd he go?" Miss Caroline pointed a shaking finger not at the floor nor at a desk, but to a hulking individual unknown to me. Little Chuck's face contracted, and he said gently, "You mean him, man?" "Yes, ma'am." "Yes'm, he's alive. Did he scare you some way?" Miss Caroline said desperately, "I was just walking by when it crawled out of his hair. Just crawled out of his hair." Little Chuck grinned broadly. "There ain't no need to fear a cootie, ma'am. Ain't you ever seen one? Now don't you be afraid. You just go back to your desk and teach us some more." Little Chuck Little was another member of the population who didn't know where his next meal was coming from, but he was a born gentleman. He put his hand under her elbow and led Miss Caroline to the front of the room. "Now don't you fret, ma'am," he said. "There ain't no need to fear Cootie. I'll just fetch you some cool water." The Cootie's host showed not the faintest interest in the furor he had wrought. He searched the scalp above his forehead, located his guest, and pinched it between his thumb and his forefinger. And so that's Barris Ewell, and how he reacts to Miss Caroline is something else. But that really gives you a good window into the Ewell family when you see how Barris acts. Towards the end of the chapter, I want you to pay attention to the conversation that Atticus has with Scout. She does not want to go to school anymore. She's been told that she can't read. Miss Caroline is not. As a teacher, she's struggling. It's her first day. And so she thinks that Scout needs to stop reading and learn all over again, which is kind of ridiculous. So Atticus has to kind of talk her down from that, and that's the conversation they have. And they also talk about why Barris doesn't have to go to school where she does. So, and the discussion question does revolve around that conversation. It's 6 minutes, which is 1 minute past the attention span apparently for freshmen watching videos, so I'm going to stop now. See you guys later.